There was this growing need to address certain issues among youth today, and I think no one was really answering them. And that's what the Live Pure aims to do, to address areas of sexuality, of love. Our main vision and mission is to promote a lifestyle of purity and chastity. Started reading up, started trying to seek for answers, and stumbled upon this message of the theology of the body, and we were blown away by it. Because here you have like priests, you have like teachers of the from the church who are talking about how sex is sacred and things like this. And I mean, up till now it was like it's taboo. You're not supposed to talk about it and all of that.
Think about it.
Yeah, and here there's a flip to it. So there was this girl that attended one of our programs. Okay, and she's married now, but she spoke then about how while growing up, her mother always put her down about how thin she was. Okay, her friends made fun of her. She was in like whatever name calling that you do, and that lie began to seep in, where she said, "Am I really like a woman? Because everyone's telling me I'm not woman enough.
Okay,
everyone's talks about homosexuality. It's a disorder and." So is masturbation. That's like 80% of the people.
That's true.
And so if I'm just here because there's something wrong with you and I'm here to, beat the devil out of you, that's not the right approach.
Yeah.
This struggle, this experience doesn't define this person, right? But even the CCC talks about how an individual who experiences this is called to Christian perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah. The church doesn't say that, they have the devil residing in them, beat the devil out of them. Pursuit of freedom, of saying, I'll do what I want. You continue to watch it. And that's unfortunately the effects then of pornography, that in search of freedom, you find yourself enslaved, that now you can't do without it. And that's what lust is, right? It's like lust indulged is a habit.
Yeah.
A habit unrestricted is a need. And which is why you'll see such a huge addiction today. Because everyone says, I'll do what I want, you don't tell me what to do. Without understanding that I'm just diving deeper into an addiction and now I can't do without it.
The way Hollywood and the world portrays chastity is like, let's not talk about it, but like, how do you what's the biggest struggle?
Firstly, I think the biggest struggle is that there is no struggle. Okay.
A lot of, what does that mean?
A lot of youngsters today are not struggling.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, to struggle is to make an effort.
Okay.
Make an effort to live a chaste life.
Oh, wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Youth today are not. A large chunk are not, because they are just moving with the tide, moving with the trend like you spoke of, right? The popular culture. And so, and especially because people are sort of like segregating biology and faith and don't want to reconcile the two, they're not struggling. That's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
And so they're happy to just be where they are.
We will review some memes.
Okay.
So you have to look at the memes and give them some kind of rating. Maybe you can talk about it and then give them rating. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. I don't need theology. I just need Jesus. I see. So who is this Jesus? He is God incarnate who came to save mankind from sin, and you are doing theology. Theology is inescapable. Theology matters. Do you think this is accurate?
It's very accurate.
Do you have any stories or like examples of real transformations that you've seen through the Live Pure program?
Many.
Hey guys, welcome to UC Talks. Today we have someone who is passionate to serve the youth. He is the founder of Resource Habitat that sends doctors and medical professionals to different countries based on their needs. He loves to bake, likes to walk, loves jazz music, and likes to sing. He is a national coordinator for Live Pure India, has been serving the youth ministry for a long time, and sensed the need for giving them sessions about theology of the body and living pure. He is also associated with the lay community in the United States of America. Please welcome Joshua Cordeiro. Joshua, it's so nice to have you here for this interview. I was trying for a long time to get you here, and finally you've agreed to come and talk to us about a lot of things that we're going to talk about today. So before we talk about the main topic today, can you give us an introduction about yourself, what you do, and which mission you're part of?
Thank you, Basil, for having me here. So it's been about 15 years that I've been working with youth, and it's been probably 15 years that I've been involved in the Live Pure mission. I think my understanding of what we've been doing, of how we've been delivering, this Live Pure program and this mission has grown over the last decade. What does this mission do, and where do I fit in? So I've been working with youth, like I said, for a long time, and there was this growing need to address certain issues among youth today, and I think no one was really answering them. And that's what the Live Pure aims to do, to address areas of sexuality, of love. Our main vision and mission is to promote a lifestyle of purity and chastity. And we do that by partnering with schools, with institutions, with colleges, parishes. I mean, any area you'd find like a group of youth, okay? To deliver a message of love.
Y'all do this all over India?
Yes.
Or is it only based on certain states?
No. So I coordinate this mission for India. And so we've been opening avenues in different areas, and we've been invited now. We've done approximately, close to 85 programs within the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Let alone maybe the last previous to that. But yeah, over the last few years, it has gained a lot of momentum. And that's really fulfilling to see so many receive this message. So we partner with institutions over like a day, over 2 days to deliver this message. And yeah, that's primarily.
Are the priests and the bishops too receptive towards like this particular message, the message of TOB and Live Pure?
Yes, there are some areas that have opened up at a diocese level. Some schools and colleges have opened it up for their entire mission. So across different schools. Yeah.
So we have a lot of good reception from the church, at least from the priests who want to do this, who are longing for this message, right?
Yeah. So like last year, we worked with in Goa itself, where some of the institutes, the diocese colleges, invited us to share this across 18 retreats. I think basically they had a compulsory retreat for different colleges, as in like at the start of their year.
Okay.
And so we partnered with them through these 18 retreats. Similarly in Chennai, in these areas where they invited us. So yeah.
Oh, that is amazing, man. The amount of work that you guys are doing. You said 85 programs in the last 2 years?
Yeah, close to probably 12 or 13,000.
I'm sure you have a team working with you.
Yes, we do. Thank God for that.
What led you into the Live Pure mission? Was there a moment, or like, I know you said you've been working with this session, with this topic for a long time, but particularly Live Pure, what made you say that this is what God is calling me to?
So like I said, right, there was this need to address key issues that no one was talking about among youth, and it was a pressing need. And so some of us who were working with youth at that point of time, this was now 2010 probably, like a long time ago, started reading up, started trying to seek for answers, and stumbled upon this message of the theology of the body, and we were blown away by it, because, here you have like priests, you have like teachers of the from the church who are talking about how sex is sacred and things like this. And I mean, up till now it was like it's taboo. You're not supposed to talk about it and all of that.
Think about it.
Yeah, and here there's a flip to it. And you're like, wait, was my life a lie all this while? But what blew us away was just this, the freedom that the theology of the body offered. And it more importantly answered the why to everything that was, taboo till then. It gave us answers to questions probably we didn't have ourselves. And the more we read, the more we realized, at least I realized, that it's answering so much. It's offering me freedom. It's offering me joy. And yeah, that's when I knew this is something I want to like learn more about and spread.
As someone who's leading this mission now, were there struggles in your life where you felt like purity is the answer to it? And was that particularly one of the reasons why you got into it, because you were also struggling in that particular issue as a youth, probably now also, but mainly with when you were a youth, and maybe you see that those similar things the youth are struggling with right now. Is that something
so as an individual, if the church says something, I predominantly, would say, okay, the church is 2,000 years old. I'm like in my 30s.
Yeah.
The church probably knows. She probably knows more, kind of a thing. And so I'm quick to obey.
Yeah.
But that's because of a rule.
Yeah.
And so I knew I had to stay pure because the church said I had to stay pure, So there wasn't really that rebellion, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, obviously there's a struggle, right? I think to stay pure is like a daily commitment,
Yeah.
right? And so there have been so many moments of struggle in my own life in relation to just love and sexuality. And I think that can bring out, and it brought on like an emptiness, and the more I read about the theology of the body, the more I read about who I am, who God is, why God created me the way He did, the more I began to experience freedom in Christ. This emptiness began to fill with joy. That's what drew me more into it. And I think so many youngsters would face that today as well, like that emptiness,
Yeah.
right? That longing to be filled. And TOB was the answer to that.
You kept mentioning about TOB. I don't know if our audience really knows what theology of the body is. So can you explain to us in simple terms? I know we're talking about theology, you cannot simplify it or dumb it down.
It's
but
been
in
15
simple
years,
terms. Yeah,
and
so
I don't
it's-
know it. The theology of the body is basically like a set of teachings. They are like these audiences, Wednesday audiences of then Pope John Paul II. I think about 135 of them over 5 years that he would, address the church. They primarily focus on who God is and who we are. Like the theology of the body. That is to understand that our body is fundamental in who we are. It's not just matter in this natural form, but it points us to a spiritual truth and identity of who we are. How our bodies are integral parts of our spiritual identity as well. The theology body talks about how our body is sacred, and God created us in this way that through our body we can reveal who He is, and that's why the foundation of like the theology of the body will be founded on aspects of love, aspects of communion. How our sexuality is an integral part of who we are, and how that can point to God as well. Which is why I mentioned earlier, sex being sacred.
Right.
Because this love and sex is an expression of this love, life-giving love, reflects who God is, a God who's love, a life-giving love.
Can you give an example of how TOB explains how the human body affirms both body being a biological truth and a spiritual dignity?
So, there was this girl that attended one of our programs, okay, and she's married now, but she spoke then about how, while growing up, her mother always put her down about how thin she was, okay. Her friends made fun of her. She was in like whatever name calling that you do. And that lie began to seep in, where she said, am I really like a woman? Because everyone's telling me I'm not woman enough.
Okay.
And she said, I always resented my body. I wished I could be a man because I'm not going to be a good woman,
Right.
in that way. And she said, I got married. And she carried that baggage into her marriage. But she got pregnant. And she said, those 9 months of my pregnancy were a form of healing. Why? Because my body knew exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah.
It's not like this on and off switch, oh, I entered my second trimester, so I got to, press in some code and now my body functions differently. She just spoke about how in that entire journey of her pregnancy and after, she saw her body knew exactly what she wanted to do. And in a science perspective, yeah, that's biology.
Yeah.
Right? But how does that connect to the foundations of our faith and the teachings of, the theology of the body? Is that's exactly how God created us. That when I enter into a union that is an expression of love, like a husband and a wife, that will bring forth life. Right? And that itself is a revelation of who God is. And she as a mother she as a woman will receive that love, right, from her husband, and that will bring forth a child. And biology and faith then kind of connect there, right? And they speak that same language, that you are created. She was affirmed of her femininity. Yeah.
Now, in the world today, okay, it's increasingly divorcing itself from faith. It's only looking at, say, the body. Like, for example, LGBTQ ideology, same-sex, pornography, all these things separate the body from the spirit. How does TOB and specifically Live Pure combat this? How do you answer these, respond to these cultural shift that we are seeing today in the world?
So the fact that you say cultural shift, you're talking about like these trends, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
See, the thing is, a trend is something that's fleeting, right? I mean, you have different trends every season. Yeah. Some may last longer, some may last decades, but in the larger scheme of things, trends are temporary. Okay? I don't think we as a team can keep up with the trends.
True.
And so I don't think we are called to even go after every trend and respond to them. I think what we aim as a team is to assess any trend I may stumble upon in the light of what I know to be true, to be good, to be beautiful. And so that's what we aim. Like, every youth who comes to our program should leave empowered with the truth of the why, to answer that. And if I can answer the how, the why, the who, anything that comes my way, anything that I stumble upon, I can assess in light of that. So since you mentioned like pornography, since you mentioned like same-sex, like relationships or whatever, like for example, pornography. I know that I'm created for love. Mm-hmm. I know that I have inherent dignity by the very virtue of being created imago Dei, right? Like, created in God's image. And I know so does the other. And so what does pornography say about that? It says I'm viewing somebody, not someone. Yeah. Right? And so I degrade that person. And so pornography degrades me, degrades the other, because I'm now not treating someone with the respect, with the love they deserve. And so I can assess that. Right. In light of what I'm called for. I'm called for union. I know that sex is an expression. And so I know this isn't an expression of love. Right? And so whatever comes my way, I can assess rather than, and then decide whether I need to respond, not respond, how to respond. Same with like a relationship among two, maybe male or female or whatever. I know I'm called to a life-giving love, because a life-giving love reflects who God is, right? Yeah. I'm called to that. And I know that isn't possible maybe with two male or two females. And so at that point of time itself, I know, oh, okay, that's not something I should be responding to. That's not something I should be involving myself in or indulging in, right? And so I think the ability to, rather than respond to every trend, to assess like the truth and everything you stumble on in light of what I know and what I've learned.
Yes, I think it's a very good perspective to take, rather than just combating these trends that may come and go. Yeah. Once you have the foundations correct,
exactly,
everything just makes sense, right? Yeah. I think that's a very good perspective. I think we've lost our way of looking at things from a fundamental perspective, and we tend to just focus on the shifting trends that happen. Because today it's LGBTQ, tomorrow it'll be something else. Yeah. But if we don't have the fundamentals, that it'll be very difficult for us to hold on to something, like, you know. Yeah. You spoke about in your programs when people come with, especially people who are currently in, like, you know, attracted to same sex, okay, for example. How do you give them the truth without compromising the church's teachings?
I think before approaching someone, we have to first assess why we are approaching them, okay? And I've seen this, unfortunately, in so many situations. Our own mentality towards someone who is experiencing same-sex attraction, you know? And so, like, the first thing is to understand, one, do you already have this prejudice? Do you already have this mindset that, oh, you're experiencing same-sex attraction? In other words, oh, that means you're in a relationship with someone. You're sleeping with someone. You're involved in some form of sexual activity.
Right.
No. that may not be the case. It might be an individual who's experiencing this, yet is living by the teachings of the church. What do you have to go and speak to them about?
Yeah.
They're probably living a holier life than you are.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, we don't know, but
Yeah.
But we can't make that assumption.
Sure.
2, am I just approaching them because I want to convert them? No one by choice chooses to experience this. It's something you experience. I mean, did you choose to be attracted to your wife? I mean, you may choose to love your wife.
Yeah.
But an attraction happens, right?
Yeah.
Or an experience may happen, and that's not something you might have chosen.
Yeah.
So is there a conversion possible that today, you are homosexual and now I'm going to convert you to a heterosexual? No, I don't think so. I mean, there definitely are some people who've experienced this,
Yeah.
who maybe don't experience it anymore.
Yeah.
But there are some who maybe have to embrace this as a lifelong, a cross.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I'm approaching them to convert them, I don't think that's the right reason to approach.
Yeah.
What the church seeks is a conversion of heart. And so if you are currently in a place where maybe you're indulging in homosexual acts, yes, that requires a conversion of heart. And so to be able to approach that person, then listen to them, walk with them, journey with them. But my mindset cannot be that I'm here to convert you. It's about I'm here to love you and walk with you. But I also think there's a third one, which is, am I approaching them to beat the devil out of them? In the sense, like everyone's, talks about homosexuality. It's a disorder, and so is masturbation. That's like 80% of the people.
That's true.
And so if I'm just here because there's something wrong with you and I'm here to, beat the devil out of you, that's not the right approach.
Yeah.
This struggle, this experience doesn't define this person, right? But even the CCC talks about how an individual who experiences this is called to Christian perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah. The church doesn't say that, they have the devil residing in them, beat the devil out of them. So I think these are things that we need to first address before we approach. And then, of course, we approach, we listen, we journey, we help them carry a cross that probably might be heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you experienced, in the multiple programs that you've done, have you experienced any participant or any youth who has or is going through it, and what was their reaction to the program, the teachings that were given to them?
Yeah. I think this topic and abortion are the two topics that are
Oh, yeah?
the hot topics at any of our programs. I've seen a lot of people rebel against it, but so many embrace it. There was a program that we did probably 2 years back at another state, and it was a group of girls, probably 120 of them, and for, I guess, no fault of theirs, they didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And so when we walked in, they were like shocked about what we are telling them. They
In a
were
good
just
way
like,
or bad way?
No, in a very bad way. Like they were like, what?
What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
what are you talking about? This is natural, this is biology, this is, all of that. Like they stood up and they were just like rebelling. It reached a point where there was quite a heated sort of like tension between the two sides kind of a thing. But we were with them for 2 days, and one of these gang leaders, I will call her, she was asked to give the vote of thanks, and probably not out of her choice, okay? But when I saw her go up, I was a little scared because I didn't know what she was going to say. But she went up and she thanked us for coming, and she did the usual, I thank you for coming and all of that, which I was expecting. But then she said something. She said, me and my friends all spoke, and we realized that if we don't listen to you, we are accusing you of doing exactly what we are doing, And I thought that was the doorway, the opening, of just at that moment saying, okay, this is new. I don't believe in this, but I'm open to listen. I'm open to hear you out, and I thought that was amazing. But we've also had so many where people have come to our program, like two individuals who are in a relationship, who walked out saying, this is not for us.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Wow. That is amazing, man.
Yeah.
Josh, you mentioned the things that a lot of youth are struggling with, like homosexuality, abortion. Are there any other areas that the youth are struggling with? I know pornography is one of the most prominent areas that youth are struggling. Do you think that's something? Is it a serious issue for a lot of youth?
It's a very big issue. I think a lot of guys talk about it. Not many of the girls talk about it, but it is a huge struggle. Majority
For
of
girls
youngsters-
even?
Yes, and a majority of like guys and girls are struggling with this. They find themselves in a place where they are in despair right now because they don't know the way forward. Yeah.
Okay, do you think like spiritually for sure, but a lot of people are talking about, not even just Christians, but secular people are talking about it, that they know that, okay, this something is wrong over here. Do you think it's like damaging psychologically, spiritually for sure, but even psychologically, is it damaging to our youth now?
You know, like people are exposed to pornography at a very young age today.
Right.
Right. And because you have like phones and, access, it's
Yeah,
more
it's
accessible,
easier,
right?
right.
It's more easy, like easily available in that sense. Right from the age of 8, 9, probably, or maybe even younger for some. And so from such a young age, I'm conditioned, to associate some form of pleasure, some form of, and maybe for a youngster of that age, it's fun,
Yeah.
with a screen, with like a tablet or a phone or whatever. And so you'll see how that starts affecting just their brain.
Yeah.
In simple words, like even dopamine levels and things like that, where you'll find that they start craving, they start isolating themselves into this little bubble, because what I seek and associate fun, etc., with just a screen, but more importantly, I feel it translates to every sphere of a youngster's life, because probably at that age you stumble upon it accidentally or whatever, but it becomes a part of you. And then if someone tells you as a counterculture, like, this isn't something you're supposed to be watching, it degrades you, that kind of a thing, now you start rebelling, because now you're going to say, no, who's a judge to tell me what to do? Who are you to tell me what to do? That kind of a thing. And you'll say, I'll do what I want, and in that hunt, or in the what do you say? Pursuit of freedom, of saying, I'll do what I want. You continue to watch it. And that's unfortunately the effects then of pornography, that in search of freedom, you find yourself enslaved, that now you can't do without it. And that's what lust is, right? It's like lust indulged is a habit.
Yeah.
A habit unrestricted is a need. And which is why you'll see such a huge addiction today. Because everyone says, I'll do what I want, you don't tell me what to do, without understanding that I'm just diving deeper into an addiction, and now I can't do without it. And that translates to all relationships as well. Because if you look at it even from a spiritual side, my relationship with God, for one, a lot of youngsters who've been struggling in this area will now start resenting God, because they'll say, why aren't you taking this away from me? I'm praying,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And they start resenting God. 2, because they're in this cycle of sin. Okay, I get out of it. I'm good for a few days, and I fall back. There's guilt, and then I hide from God because of that. But it translates to other relationships too, because I isolate myself. I'm not investing in real relationships, with my own family, with virtuous friends, with anyone around, But more importantly, pornography tells you to look at yourself. It makes you selfish, because it's my pleasure, my need at that moment, right? And so you're not able to serve others, because you're not looking at the other, you're just looking at yourself. So I feel that can even enter a marriage, which I think is a primary reason for one of the major reasons for even marriages to be struggling today. Yeah.
How did you spoke about there's a gap between what I want and what the church is asking from us. And as we see in the world, things like changing a lot. Like we spoke about trends. How can young people, okay, how can youth, the Catholics especially, how can we stay grounded, okay, among these changes that are happening? Whether we don't know what is right, what is wrong. The morality is like thrown out of the window.
Yeah.
How can young Catholics stay grounded in this time?
So one of our objectives as the Live Pure ministry, as part of our mission, we aim that every of our programs must have an encounter with Christ. Okay, because we can talk about all these topics. Okay, you can educate yourself really well about it. You can have great amount of information, but it's only Christ, I believe, who can renew the heart. And so, if I can encounter Christ in this, whether it is through the healing presence at the Eucharist, or at the confession, or just a time of adoration, just the ability to come before Him, have that encounter with Him, to be able to grow in a personal relationship, because He is unchanging. He is like the way, the truth, and the life, right? He is the truth.
Yeah.
And so, if I have that relationship with Him, like how I mentioned earlier, right? You assess based on the truth,
yeah.
right? And so, whatever's changing, whatever's right, whatever's wrong, you can be told today something is right and it's wrong tomorrow and right again, You don't have to listen to that, because you are today empowered to assess based on what Christ tells you, based on what you've learned to be true, good, and beautiful. Yeah.
Is there a difference between, I get that, that we need to hold on to the truth, but some people say, why aren't you changing with times? Like, morality changes, sometimes what we thought as to be morally bad, now we accept it, or sometimes what we thought morally good is now not accepted, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think we could draw a line between that? Like, some things we know that are unchanging, some things, okay, maybe we can adapt to. Like, for example, before we didn't have a good perspective of people who were struggling with same-sex attraction, and we always used to hound them down. But now we've really understood what they're going through. So do you think there is a distinction that we can put in how much truth we can accept as a basis, and some things that we can work towards, like for example with same-sex attraction, how we need to work with them, the church talks about?
Okay, firstly, we need to understand the church isn't teaching something based on how it thinks.
Right.
And so if you're saying the church needs to keep up with the times, the church might respond to certain aspects, keeping with
behaviors
the time.
Probably.
Yeah, but it will always be based on a foundation, not that the church has come up with, but revealed by God Himself.
True.
That's the first thing we have to understand. And so there is objective truth.
Right.
2 + 2 is 4 kind of an objective truth, right? Truth is not something that changes by the circumstances.
Not malleable, right?
Yeah. So that's the first thing we have to understand. When it comes to, our understanding, like I said earlier, my understanding of the theology body has changed so much over the last 15 years. Our understanding of the truth will evolve. The truth will stay the truth.
Okay, that
whether
makes sense.
I accept it,
Yeah.
whether I understand it, how much of it I understand.
Yeah.
But the truth will stay the truth. In the light of what the church has been teaching, the church has kept to the same foundations of its truth, has evolved in its understanding of the truth. I believe that is what we can understand from this.
Okay, that makes sense. Because a lot of people have a confusion about whether truth changes, whether it can evolve, and I think that's a very good perspective.
Just to add a little more, since you brought up the aspect of homosexuality, right?
Yeah.
The church has always held that homosexuality in itself is disordered, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not ordered as per the natural life-giving love that God has designed us for. But it has evolved to understand that probably someone who experienced same-sex attraction hasn't chosen it. And like I said earlier, not everyone is involved in that relationship.
True.
And so if I haven't chosen it, if
I'm not involved
living,
in it.
Yeah, if I'm not living that out, then where do I stand? Oh, you maybe experience something, but you're choosing chastity, you're choosing, right?
Yeah.
And so the church's understanding of that has also evolved. Yeah.
Right. What do you think you deal with so many youth, and especially with regards to homosexuality and pornography and masturbation, all these things that the youth go through. What do you think is the biggest struggle that the youth face in living a chaste life, a life which a lot the way Hollywood and the world portrays chastity is let's not talk about it, but how do you what's the biggest struggle?
Firstly, I think the biggest struggle is that there is no struggle. Okay. A lot of
what does that mean?
A lot of youngsters today are not struggling.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, to struggle is to make an effort.
Okay.
make an effort to live a chaste life.
Wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Youth today are not, a large chunk are not, because they are just moving with the tide, moving with the trend like you spoke
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
right? The popular culture. And so, and especially because people are sort of like segregating biology and faith and don't want to reconcile the two, they're not struggling. That's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
And so they're happy to just be where they are. But if, let's give the benefit of the doubt here, there are some who are struggling, okay, who want to live a chaste life.
Yeah,
and
let's not generalize.
Yes, let's not generalize. There's another section of those who are seeking to live a chaste life, right, but are struggling. I would like to maybe talk about, like they'll struggle with pornography and all of that. But I think there's one area that I've seen over the programs that we've been doing and the youth that we've been sort of meeting. One of our sessions, that's the first session, talks about our identity. Who we are, how God created us, why He created us out of His own love, and He loves us, right? He's poured His love into our hearts. And I think youngsters forget that, and why do they forget that? Because the world, forget the world, people around them, like their immediates would talk about how they're not good enough, they're only worth something if they do better than so-and-so, and that kind of thing. And so their worth is now defined by, how good they are, how much they have, and those kind of things. And so it's a very conditional form.
Yeah.
And to them that translates like, oh, because I didn't do well in an exam, I'm not loved. Right? And so that the truth and reality of I'm loved, I am worth, I am valued is lost. And so they go in search of validation. And I think that becomes the first struggle when it comes to chastity, because I have this void, this need for love, forgetting that I'm actually loved, and I go in search of it. Like I remember there was this guy and girl who came for one of our programs, and I was talking to the boy, and he spoke about how they've been involved physically with each other for like such a long time. And when we were talking, I said, I really think you need to go and apologize to this girl, And so he said, I will. And he did. And her response was, I knew you were using me. I just didn't know how to say stop, because I thought if I said no to you, you'd walk away. Like, she was so in need of just that attention.
Yeah.
She replaced love now with attention, and she's getting this attention from this guy, and so she's willing to give him whatever he wants,
just to get that attention.
Just so that he's there. And I think that becomes a large struggle when it comes to chastity. Just the seeking out in search of validation.
Do you think friends, media, the way social media now has a huge impact on why people don't have a good impression about sexuality and say relationships you spoke about?
Yeah.
Do you think media and peer pressure and friends have a big influence on this?
Let's talk about media. Okay, first. If you look at maybe it's songs, maybe it's like an OTT platform, or movies or whatever, right? What are the primary themes that a lot of these would focus on? It would be based on love.
Yeah.
Based on sex. Based on maybe like relationships, like identity.
Yes.
Right? Key topics that we talk about in theology, right? They should meet us. Anyway. But how is that portrayed?
Right.
It's portrayed that, hey, you have a need, you have a desire, go seek it.
Yeah.
Right? It says, you want something, go get it. Right? It doesn't say, what is the consequence on that person then? And that's the big word, utilitarianism.
Yeah.
Which is seeking to maximize my pleasure, minimize my pain at the cost of the other. And that's exactly what media teaches.
Yeah.
And so youngsters will go out forgetting that they're called to love. They're called to seek, okay, what's good for them, yeah, definitely, but what's good for the other as well, right? And that's what Pope John Paul says is the personalistic norm, which is by the very virtue of me being human, being created in the image and likeness of God, I as an individual deserve love and nothing more. And I deserve to, or rather, the other deserves love, and I need to treat that person with love and nothing less, which is unfortunately not spoken about today in media and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, so Josh, you spoke about social media, spoke about other things that influence the youth. What about peer pressure?
I don't want to be that guy that talks about, and everyone's talking about, peer pressure, our friends tell us to do this and do that kind of thing. I want to share with you my friends. I grew up with friends who taught me to respect, taught me what love meant in relationships, what serving the other, being available for the other meant. So if you ask me, how does peer pressure, influence? It influences in a big way. And to me, it's influenced me in a positive way. To really look at the importance of true love waiting, the importance of respecting the other, knowing that my actions, my words have lasting consequences on someone. And obviously that can be on the flip side as well, right?
Yeah.
There's that saying, right? You show me 5 of your friends, and I'll show you your future.
Your future, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes.
And so, I think to everyone who is listening, you assess your friends, and you'll know how they are influencing you. I would like to just say that.
Yeah, I think that's very important for us to. Biggest influence are our friends. As you said, it can be positive, it could be negative, and most of the time we don't really choose our friends right, and then we find ourselves in situations where we don't want to be. And it's very important, the point that you made, that we need to choose our friends really, really well, because that will shape our future. I really like that response that you gave, and I think our viewers, our youth need to see that and find their friends who are good. What are the trigger patterns you think the youth maybe they don't know, but I'm sure there were some trigger patterns that would lead them to that particular area. Fall. How do they identify that, and how do they avoid that, according to you?
So first, I had spoken about this, acting out in search of validation, right, earlier. I think that can be a huge area. And so to be able to examine your own heart and rest with the truth and reality that I'm loved, you'd know if you're in search. I think that's one area, but I don't want to go too much into that. We've already discussed it. But other patterns would be a youngster's emotions, whether it's just like a low self-image, and so I want to escape from that reality. I want to, again, it's a little of validation as well. And so I'd act out, and I'll go in search, whether it's pornography, in this way, to soothe myself. And that will bring about maybe guilt, or that will bring about a frustration of now a habitual sin that I can't get out of, and that has affected my studies, and that has affected my work, and because that's the part of lust, right? That it's the here and now. I want it now, kind of a thing, right? And so it's affected so many areas of your life, and so you'll find yourself in that spiral of I'm either frustrated or I'm in this guilt of falling a lot. And what would I do to soothe myself? I'd go back. Right, and so that pattern of just sin after sin, coupled with these roller coaster of emotions, But apart from that, I think an important trigger pattern today, especially, is Instagram. Everyone talks about pornography, the new drug, right? And I think Instagram is the new silent killer. In this day and age, everyone's justifying that they're not watching pornography because they've not gone on this site, but they're quite happy to spend 3 hours on Instagram, right? And today youngsters are talking, if you go on Instagram, you'll know how long you've been online, your activity over the last week. It's 3 hours, it's 4 hours, and then they're putting limits of, I'm just going to, be on Instagram rather for 1 hour, that's still an entire hour. And what is Instagram feeding you, right? I mean, it's your feed. And so you see that it's feeding you something, right? And you're consuming. And one bad click can change your entire algorithm, Yeah,
that's true.
And
I think Instagram, TikTok, all these sites thrive on this, right? Thrive on this one point of reference, and it just keeps feeding you that.
It's just feeding you. And you're consuming it. And that's the trap, right? And you'll say it just popped up. It didn't technically just pop up. Because
something led that.
The more you're eating, the more it's feeding, right? I mean,
And
and I mean, can you really like sanctify your feet after that?
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And so you'll be.
It
in
takes
this
a long time
Yeah.
to do that.
And let's face it, you cannot tell like any youth today get off Instagram.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, they might get off Instagram, they're not going to get off Snapchat. So, but that's where they get stuck. The trap of, but I'm not watching pornography. I'm just on Instagram. Oh, but it's triggering me. Oh, it just popped up, and I just go through that same cycle.
Yeah. Josh, you spoke about how, there's peer pressure, there's social media, and there are certain trigger patterns that that lead our youth to fall into, vices. What does the Live Pure mission give, or how does the Live Pure mission help our youth to stay committed to chastity, to purity?
So first, we are always accessible, okay? Because we understand that this is not something you can do on your own, right? And so as much as in our retreats and our programs, we encourage to join groups of like-minded people who are seeking, this virtue of chastity, who are seeking holiness. We also understand that may not be possible always. And so to be connected, so we're like on social media, we give out our email address that, you can always reach out, right? So that's the first thing. But from a practical sense for an individual, because this is an individual walk as well, right? We can support you, but we can't walk that for you.
Yeah.
And so just practical things, one, the reminder that this is a commitment that you need to make every day, okay? Two, that it involves some yeses and some nos when you commit. And so what is those practical things, like the yes, to cut the triggers.
Yeah.
Right? The no's to probably not indulge like these conversations that are not life-giving or can trigger me, those kind of things. And so I think it's so crucial to look into these practical aspects of just cutting the source, of avoiding idleness, just fleeing from these occasions of sin, but that's the practicality of it. I also know that this is something you can't do on your own, right? And so as much as we can support you, you need to be grounded in a relationship with God. And so we give them things that they can do to stay connected, what we call channels of grace, because you are automatically strengthened. I keep talking to people about, when you eat food, it's giving you strength, right?
Yeah.
Do you see it give you strength? You'll only see it at the outcome.
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening inside, and
you don't know the mechanics of it.
Once it's gone into your mouth, you don't understand the mechanics
works,
of it, right? Same with spiritual nourishment. You may read the Word of God. You may spend time in adoration. You might go to a confession. You might receive the Eucharist, and in that moment, you can see yourself receive that, and then you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
But you will see the fruit of it. You will see that strength. And if you are trying to live a pure life apart from God, I have bad news for you. It's not possible.
I mean, yeah, because a lot of self-taught gurus on YouTube, you talk about positivity. Do you think that will that help? Being connected to God is what will give you the strength to overcome these things?
I think this battle is a spiritual battle.
Right.
And so you need a spiritual helper. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Josh, today a lot of people are separating faith and science. How do you combat that as the Live Pure mission? How do you all deal with people who say, I don't think faith and science can merge together. I think they're completely two mutually exclusive concepts. You cannot merge them. What do you say to people like that?
I think that's become very common. Okay. I think the unfortunate reality is a lack of formation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably my failing, your failing, the failing of our families, of our parishes, or maybe even Christian institutions, because no one's talking about these aspects sometimes. How many people are really talking about the faith?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like we discussed, there's so much of media, etc., that's allowing someone to consume something. Their science textbooks are talking about it. And what would you then want to believe in, right? Something that you keep reading, something that's you're more familiar with,
Yeah.
right? But science is not a belief system.
Yeah.
It's a methodology.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And so you can't put your faith in the method. This method will help you with the truth of your faith, maybe.
Yeah.
It can help you and can help affirm your belief system.
Yeah.
But even the church says that, and the church is not opposed to science, right? The
Yeah.
church also says that science will affirm the very truth of what we believe in
God
and what
has
we stand
revealed.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you say to people who say, I believe in science, but not in religion?
You can't believe in you can't believe science and not believe in God, because God created science. Now you may say that's a very theological answer.
Yeah.
There's someone who doesn't believe in God or whatever. Like let's take a practical example. Okay, if I were to ask people like your favorite book. Okay, let's name a book. Okay, okay, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the author. You have Tolkien. Now, if you take you take Lord of the Rings, is Tolkien a character there?
No.
No. Do you see him anywhere?
No.
No. And so for someone reading this book, they can read this entire book, fall in love with the various characters, the scene, love the book. Tolkien's nowhere. But if you approach this book with some curiosity, you will see that the author is actually very much part of every single character, scene, word that is written there. Because he's the author.
Yeah.
Just how God is the author of life in this creation. And so if you're struggling with your faith and you can just see matter and you can see the physical and you're struggling to look at the invisible, approach creation with some curiosity.
That's a very good perspective.
Approach it with some curiosity. Stop consuming and not looking at the source, the authenticity. Just creation itself will reveal. That is what the basis of theology of the body is.
Right.
Ask the why.
Yeah.
God is in his creation. He's revealed. All it needs is some curiosity when you approach. The founding fathers of our church, like the teachers of our church, would say the same. Like science and faith are not in opposition. They will be reconciled. And God exists very much in his creation. And if you're struggling, just approach God's creation with some curiosity. Just like you can approach a book and you'll see not just hints, but so much of the author there.
Yeah.
The writing style, the cultural references, so many things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you can just read the book and not know the author, or you can read the book with some curiosity and that author comes alive.
That's a good perspective. All right, Josh, so we'll move to the section where we will review some memes.
Okay.
So you have to look at the memes and give them some kind of rating. Maybe you can talk about it and then give them rating. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. So our first meme is this. I don't need theology, I just need Jesus. I see. So who is this Jesus? He is God incarnate who came to save mankind from sin, and you're doing theology. Theology is inescapable. Theology matters. Do you think this is accurate?
It's very accurate. I would rate this in terms of theology of the body, I would rate this like an 8.5.
Wow.
Why? Because the theology of the body says our body is not just biology, it's theology.
Oh.
Because, and so yeah, you can't escape from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Let's move to the next meme. Okay. Meme number 2. The Holy Trinity, the only love triangle that works.
That is true.
Do you want to just explain or just give some teaser of what this means for the audience who have no idea about TOB? Maybe you can plug in your program for them.
Yeah. To know about this, come for our programs. So,
do you approve of this love triangle?
I definitely approve of this love triangle. I don't approve of any other.
And
what is this love triangle? It's basically the love between God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like even our the Nicene Creed, right? It says the same thing, that out of the love of the Father and the Son springs forth the Holy Spirit, who proceeds from the Father and Son. And that's the third person. That's where the triangle comes about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this portion of the TOB is quite dense.
It's very dense.
You'll need to
So I'll rate this probably like 6.5, only because our audience may not all get it.
get it. Yeah. You have to be in the thing to understand.
Come join
this.
us. Learn a little more.
Then you can rate it higher. All right, next meme. Christian dating. She says, "You better not get in the way of me loving Jesus."
Oh man, 10 on 10.
Is this too like why are you bringing Jesus in our relationship?
You know, if only young girls had the courage to say no.
Right.
And here you have someone saying, don't get in the way. Don't get in the way of my purity. Don't get in the way of what true love is. She's basically protecting herself, but also protecting him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The example that you gave, I think probably if that girl was seeking attention, right?
Yeah.
But if she was actually seeking Jesus,
Yeah.
right, in a relationship,
Yeah.
that's what she wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you rate this?
10 on 10.
10 on 10. Wow.
Because it's such a huge struggle.
It is, yeah. All right, last meme. Me vibing to a song I found. Me when I pay attention to the lyrics only to hear it's sexually immoral.
I don't think anyone's paying attention to lyrics anymore, but if only they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's conditioning you without you even knowing.
Yeah, it could be a trigger point, right?
Definitely.
Because I think that would be more dangerous because you don't even know that it's affecting you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, how much would you rate this?
I would rate this, because I like music, probably 9. I would rate maybe these songs like a 3. But
Okay.
good songs, 9.
Yeah.
This definitely hits a 9.
What about the guy's face? Do you think it's accurate of how you would make your face when you realize it?
I think a lot of youngsters would. I don't know if I would make that face. I can be pretty dramatic, but I don't know if I'd make that face. But I know a lot of people would, yeah.
Yeah. I think for us to have this reaction is a good reaction.
Yes.
Because we need to be able to realize,
Yeah.
I was listening to this song for
Yeah.
so many years, I didn't even realize that. I think,
Yeah.
Thank you for reviewing these memes. Josh, I want to just move into the section where we can talk about how Live Pure approaches young people who are struggling with deeply with how to live a chaste life, how to be chaste, and especially the church's teachings on chastity.
Yeah. You know, we spoke about how someone is exposed to pornography and all of this at such a young age, right? And so you today are deep in this for years, right? And I know we said there's a section who doesn't struggle, but there's a section who's trying, who's frustrated that, you know, they are in this struggle and they're trying, and I mean, they have few good days, what they call, and then they're back, you know, in that same rut. I think the beauty of this struggle is that it points you to your solution, you know, where you've realized that I have tried, and I have tried. And that's when you realize, I can't do this on my own. And so, if you are to overcome this, you need God. You know, this struggle, this pain that you're in, itself points you to the fact that this is not something you can do on your own. Right. And so we must approach every of these struggles in every individual and remind them of that reality. That, you know what, you've been trying, okay? You've been having some good days, okay? But the battle persists. And let this struggle point you to the fact that, Lord, I need you.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do this on my own. And that is, I mean, that is what we teach at our programs. You know, that you have to have that encounter with God. You have to build that relationship with Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you spoke about how it's not just body, right? It's spirit too. So when you look at, you know, the people who are struggling with chastity, they're probably looking at it from just purely body and said, okay, I can manage it. I can work this out. I'll do some fasting and, you know, it'll help me. But if you don't have a relationship with Christ, as you mentioned, it will seem impossible to live a chaste life, right?
It won't seem, it will.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories or like examples of real transformations that you've seen through the Live Pure program?
Many. I shared about how there were 2 girls that walked in, right?
Yeah.
And but there are so many more. There was, actually, I'll share one area that I've seen, not just with an individual, but with so many, and especially related to young girls today. I think so many of them have found themselves in a place where they resent who they are. They resent their bodies because they look at it as a burden. Because it's like this hindrance that you're going to expect me to one day have children, and it's going to affect my career, and it's going to affect, all of that. And they walk into these programs with that notion, and we start talking about the theology of the body. We speak about how God created you, all of that, and there's such resistance in some time, But after some time, we've seen real transformation of young girls who are able to accept who they are, like to embrace who God has called them to be. Just to look at their bodies as capable of receiving love, of bearing a child, of nurturing. I think they leave with a sense of empowerment that this is something that I can do. It's a privilege.
Yeah.
And there's so many who have left with that kind of an acceptance. Because I think today everyone throws like, oh, you're different. You're equal, but you're different. But they get to understand why they're different.
Yeah.
Why a guy is different and why a girl is different. But yet equal in worth, equal in dignity, but different in who we are called to be.
Yeah.
And there is that acceptance of, that's who you are called to be. This is who I am called to be. And different doesn't mean inferior.
Yeah.
Different doesn't mean inferior.
Yeah.
It's equal, different, but same in God's eyes. And so I've seen great transformation, real stories of people who can share how they have accepted their femininity and they've embraced it.
Wow.
And I think that's a huge chunk of people that we've seen. But also just recently we had a girl who shared about how, she viewed herself as a boy, and she said, I liked being called a boy, and, things like that. And I dressed like that and all of that. But when she came to know of this, this truth of who God has called her to be, like she says, even the way I dress changed. Because, I accepted my femininity to an extent that, okay, I knew I was someone to be sought after, and those are like real stories that you can, you can hold on to. There was recently a boy who spoke about how today he's married, but how this program has, allowed him to, sort of build his marriage with the foundation of purity, chastity, in this way. But, I'd like to share with you what happened last year. We were at a program and we had this open forum, like different people asked different questions, right? And so we addressed them, whatever. And at some point, so it was me and another girl who was on top, and we were answering different questions. And there was something about a girl, who put out there saying, I chat with this man on Instagram or whatever, one social media platform, and why is that wrong? She just put it out there, and we were on stage, just realized what was happening there. You're talking about like a 16-year-old probably,
Okay.
who's been chatting with someone who she doesn't know on Instagram. I'm assuming Instagram, one of these platforms, and I could only imagine what he's doing there, and we felt the need to address this issue. And, we spoke about how you deserve love, don't confuse love and attention,
Yeah.
The next day, so it was a 2-day program. The next day, when we were answering questions again to end day 2, there was this little note that came from this girl, and she said, thank you for yesterday. She said, I didn't have the courage to block this person, and whenever I did, I would take my, like someone else's phone and reopen an account and whatever and continue chatting. And she said, I knew this was toxic. I knew this was something that, I shouldn't be a part of. I just didn't have the courage to, and he would treat me wrong. He would, and I think there was like sexual content that came about through it and all of that. But she said, like the courage and ability to step out, to block, to whatever, only came from the reality that she's loved, that she deserves more. And I just feel there are so many youngsters probably who are in that place today. And if we could see one of these, I'm pretty sure there are so many more who still need that, probably have gone through that, who've maybe got out of it, I hope so. But for those who are still struggling, like I think there needs to be words of love, of encouragement spoken to them. So I've seen these kind of transformation.
Oh, that's amazing. sometimes I think, as you said, these people probably don't know that what they are seeking is ultimately God, and they're trying to filling it in through the toxic relationships and whatever attention they can grab onto.
And she said a man, so it's probably someone way older, probably who earns, who's probably gifting her stuff, those kind of things, which so he's just luring her.
Yeah, and I think you guys are doing a very good job of like at least bringing these things in the forefront to the youth today, to just be cognizant about who you're talking to, what kind of relationships we are having with people, and sometimes these youth have no idea what they're getting into. So I'm really excited for the work that you guys are doing. I really pray for your ministry. Do you have any challenges being the coordinator of Live Pure? And I'm sure you have some joys also. Can you share some of the challenges and joys that you have?
Let's start with the negative first. I think one of the biggest challenges, I would say, something so disheartening sometimes, is to see how, whether it's schools or institutes or whatever it is, look at something that we're offering as just this program to tick off. And so you get these calls like, oh, can you do this program for us? They don't really, they're not person-centric. They just want to tick off something, to get done.
Yeah.
And you can see it so evidently in that moment. And it's such a disservice to the people who are in your care. That you don't see, you're not sensitive to their struggle, just their cry.
Yeah.
And all you want right now is, let's just tick something off, because at the end of the year we have to give a report to say we did this program.
It's not about people, it becomes about just the logistics of the program.
The functionality of it, that we had to we had to tick it off. But we'll take it. I mean, if we get 2 days with them, we'll take it. But that's the real struggle. And I think the biggest struggle is then to look at these people and love them after. I'm kidding. But I'm kidding. But that's a challenge. But that's exactly what the world has become. That we're not sensitive to the cry of a youngster. And there are so many youngsters, when we're talking to them, so often we have like a one-on-one with them, because you can't just address large groups, right? You have to also be able to minister personally. So many of them just talk about how for the first time they've been heard. They have no one to talk to. And you're thinking, there's like 600 people around you right now and you have no one to talk to.
Yeah. That's really sad.
Yeah, that speaks of that loneliness, that you might be in the midst of so many, but there's not one that you can approach. There's not one who, you can just share your life with. Yeah, and I think that's a huge challenge. That though we've got so many avenues opening, so often they're just looked on as these tick marks, and that's an unfortunate reality.
Josh, just want to ask you, do you find any kind of resistance or some kind of backlash in the way sometimes people ask you to come and do these programs, especially if it's regarding sex?
Yes. So like I said, right, they just want to tick off something. So they'll call us and they'll say, oh, can you do the program? I mean, we'll take it, right? Because we get a group of youth that we can share a message with. But then it starts, you're going to talk about sex? You're going to talk about purity? Like, our youth will run away. Like, they don't want to be challenged. But we're not made for that comfort, right? And we don't want people to just be living in that kind of, that's their cry. Yeah. They want something. They want to know the truth. They want to be set free. But there's such a huge lack of an understanding, I would say, at that moment where people are not able to see it and they forbid you from doing that. I mean, let alone talk about sex and these kind of things. In so many, even like Christian institutions, we'd have like requests not to talk about Christ, not to, and just like come speak, but don't use the word Jesus. And I think that's a disservice.
Right. I mean, I get where they're coming from, especially because how we've been just, conditioned to keep sex as like a taboo. Yeah. So I get where they're coming from. But do you think after the program is done, somehow you've managed to do the program in the parish or whatever, do you think there's a change in perspective from the people who've called you and said that was good? I
would like to think so, because over the last few years, we've been called repeatedly by these organizations. Okay. So I would think that has some kind of an effect. Yeah.
Okay. And joys.
Yeah, let's
And
talk
move
about
to the positive.
Yeah, let's talk about joys. You know, I think there's no better joy than walking out of a program and seeing that energy, seeing just the smiles on their face. You know, when we enter, they all know why we've come, right? Because the program will be announced about, like live pure or whatever. They know we're going to talk about certain things they don't want us to talk about. And so when we're there, we're seated there, we start talking. You'd see resistance at the start. You'd see like, hey, don't tell me what to do, all of that. But that's how God works, right? Like you continue to talk, you sow seeds, and you allow that to bear fruit. That when you're leaving, there's such joy, there's such energy, and all our programs, at least we aim to have confession, we aim to have the Eucharist, and so they meet God there. There's the healing presence of Christ there. There's forgiveness there, and so obviously there's so much of weight that they've unburdened, they've unpacked. And I think that's the greatest joy. Just when you're walking out and they're welcoming you back, or whatever. That's
Josh, if our audience they're watching, what how would anyone get involved with Live Pure? Do you want to share about what you guys do and how some of these guys can be part of Live Pure, and in any way, where can they begin, basically, in a moment?
First I'd like to say this. If there's someone who needs help, reach out. Okay, I know you're asking me, can someone get involved more? They can, and we'll talk about that. But I just want to address, hey, there's also people who might just need help.
Yeah.
Right? We aim to be accessible, and so livepureindia@gmail.com. Okay, reach out. Instagram, follow us. Handle is Live Pure India. We are available whenever you need. That's exactly why we have this, to be accessible in that moment of crisis where you don't, like I said, right? Some people don't know where to turn to. They are in the midst of so many people. We welcome you. We want to hear your story, right? But for those who want to maybe be involved a little more, there's one thing that we as a team, when we initially started taking these programs out, spoke of, and that was, we need to, embrace this message ourselves first. Right? And so if you want to be a part of this, and join this larger vision, connect with us. We can grow in this vision together. We can, learn about this, embrace this message, but more importantly, live this out.
Yeah.
Right? And then all that training and moving out, that just comes.
Yeah.
But the ability to live that out, But if there are some who are listening and want this for their schools, want this for their colleges, want this for their parishes, we're more than happy. Reach out again to the same email address, Instagram handle, and we can come and we can do these programs.
Yeah. We'll put all the details in the link in the description, or we'll put it on the screen. Yeah.
Sure.
Josh, do you have any resources for our audience? Any books or, I don't know, videos that they can watch? So,
Unapologetic Catholic, for one.
Thank you. Any books you would recommend to them to read?
So, if you're specifically speaking about like the theology of the body and answering these practical things, I think there are a few people who I have learned a lot from. Jason Ebert, Christina Ebert, husband and wife, Christopher West, basically Ascension Press.
Yeah.
They have a lot on this, and I have learned a lot reading a lot of their books and their videos, a lot of that, and I think it's a good place to start. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think there is any kind of resources where they could learn more about TOB? Do they have any kind of institute?
Yes, the Theology of the Institute is a place that you can start.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can check that out. There are courses, there are diplomas and I think there's most dioceses offer like a short course on the theology of the body as well. Yeah, across India too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Josh, so much for this interview. We learned so much. We spoke so much about TOB, about the youth today and the struggles that they are going through. It was really amazing to hear your stories, what you guys are doing, to just see the heart that you all have to work with the youth. And I'm really amazed, and I'll continue to pray for your ministry, for your for your programs to be successful and more states and parishes open up to you guys, because we know that this is something that is the need of the hour, because a lot of youth don't know about this. They have no idea about the fact that they need this, they need Christ, they need this message. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for spending time with us and talking about this. I hope to see you again in the future for an interview.
For sure.
Yeah. And thank you once again for joining.
Thank you, Basil, for having me.